Good evening, I'm Cynthia Ng. This is AWANI Tonight. PM downplays talk of G15, says we'll wait for the right time. And we take a closer look at the PKR elections. What can Rafizi bring to the table? That's coming up. Datuk Sri Ismail Sabri Yaakob has indicated that he is in no rush to call for a general election anytime soon, contrary to speculation that polls may be held before the year ends. In an interview with Nikkei Asia, the Prime Minister cited a rise in food prices and other living costs as reasons to push back the elections. An election is not due until 2023, but Ismail Sabri has been facing pressure from some in UMNO to call an early vote to capitalise on UMNO's strong showing in recent state and by-elections. He told Nikkei that he will wait for the right time to call an election, given inflationary pressures, partly arising from the Ukraine-Russia conflict. Bank Negara Malaysia expects headline inflation to average between 2.2 and 3.2% this year, with food costs up 4.1% in April. The UMNO Vice President also indicated that he is keen to bring back consumption tax to expand the government's revenue and ease the strain on public subsidies. The government plans to expand the MySejahtera application for other than its original purposes of COVID-19 screening and vaccine verification. In an interview with CNBC, Health Minister Khairy Jamaluddin discusses some of the challenges in doing so, including gaining people's trust.
This is the big issue. I think rolling out apps, digitalizing health records, tough, huge challenge, but the biggest challenge is trust. After 2 years of telling people what to do, what not to do, political capital amongst governments with the people rapidly depleting. Now we're asking them, we're going to pivot this app from something that we used during the pandemic to public health because it makes sense. Population-wide enrollment, why not use this for health screening, for preventive health campaigns? But trust is important. If people say, look, I'm not quite sure if I'm still willing to go with this. We were quite happy during the pandemic because we understood the need for contact tracing. But now, what's the data governance here? So it's very important that we build a solid, robust, transparent and credible framework for data governance for people to trust us.
During a PKR debate with Datuk Sri Saifuddin Nasution Ismail earlier this month, Rafizi Ramli pointed out the need for the party to change its direction. Political analyst Mujibu Abdul Muiz says that his suggestions to focus on issues facing the people is an advantage to the party. But will it be enough to woo back voters to Pakatan Harapan or to attract new voters to support the opposition bloc?
He most of the time pointed to the neutral voters. He talks not only for the members of PKR, but his point were generally targeted as well to the outside voters or the voters in general. So I believe this will be a good factor for Rafizi, especially when the youngsters who does not have any political affiliation, who does not have any political stand, to see the general ideas, the things that Rafizi fight, the cause that Rafizi fight for PKR is not only for PKR, but it's also for the people in general. When he talks about food security, he talks about belief in people, he talks about we need to get rid of this political budget, especially when you talk about corruption, not integrity in political practice that have clouded our political scenario for a long time, and give a new and fresh idea of politics with new development, for example, environmental issues, economic issues, and of course contemporary issue like food security, so on and so forth. So yes, this will be a good reflection for a person who will see this thing as a new or perspective on politics rather than having politics that only talk about power and power struggle, so on and so forth. So maybe this is a good thing. So it's up to the PKR as well as DPH on how to use Rafizi and his idea to gather support, especially not only to attract the people who used to vote PH and turn their votes in the last state election to others, as well as to attract new voters, especially the youngsters or the one who does not have any political stand or political affiliation to vote for Pakatan Harapan.
PKR's Party Election Committee will decide within a week if a forensic audit of the recent party elections is needed. Committee Chairman Dr. Zaleha Mustafa said that the request is fair following complaints on the unofficial poll results. She told The Star that there were a few hundred complaints from candidates. On Tuesday, Farhaj Wafal Salvador, who was defeated in the Gombak division race, expressed doubt over the outcome of the unofficial results. He claimed they were manipulated as the vote counting process took place without the presence of third parties or candidates' representatives. The official results will be announced at the PKR National Congress on June 25th and 26th. Will the recent PKR party polls mean a new direction for a party that has been plagued by defections and deep divisions? Tonight on Consider This, we speak to our guests about the trajectory the polls might set. That's coming up right after AWANI Tonight. University Utara Malaysia UUM said that its campus was maintained properly following accusations of negligence in the wake of the death of a student as Vinosini. Its Vice-Chancellor Haim Hilman Abdullah said that maintenance work was carried out according to procedure and schedule. He told reporters this after visiting Vinosini's family at their home in Klang. 21-year-old Vinosini was found dead in her hostel room on May 21st, suspected to have been electrocuted. Her father has lodged a police report against the university, accusing them of negligence. Police have classified the case as sudden death. Meanwhile, UUM had lifted a gag order issued earlier to bar students from speaking or holding vigils for Vinosini. In a clarification today, it said solidarity events were allowed, but that students should be mindful of their actions as the case is still being investigated by authorities. We will go for a quick break. Stay with us.
Jualan Riang Raya Maxis. Bawa pulang peranti idaman baharu hanya RM50 sebulan dengan Maxis Home Fiber hari ini. Melindungi anda dan seisi keluarga dalam ruang tertutup. Panasonic.
Welcome back. Daily COVID-19 cases in Shanghai fell by the most in 2 months as the city gears up to emerge from lockdown at midnight. Shanghai imposed a lockdown from April 1st to combat the highly transmissible Omicron outbreak. The strict lockdowns have fueled public anger and battered the city's manufacturing economy, disrupting supply chains in China and around the world. About 22.5 million people, or 90% of Shanghai's population, currently live in low-risk zones that have been infection-free for 14 days. They can leave their compounds and ride on public transport, which has been mostly restored. The Chinese government has also earmarked $45 billion of tax breaks, financial incentives, and spending to restore economic growth. While companies could resume operating, few could produce at full capacity due to the knock-on effects of disrupted supply chains. New infections in Shanghai fell by 53.7% in the past 24 hours, the biggest one-day percentage decline since March 6. Thailand detected its first case of monkeypox in a passenger who flew in from Europe. The patient, who transited in Bangkok for 2 hours, was bound for a flight to Australia, where he later developed symptoms.
12 crew members and passengers on the flight in close contact with the infected are now being quarantined in Thailand for 7 days. They remained asymptomatic over the past 7 days and would be monitored until day 21, the disease incubation period. Meanwhile, 5 Irish tourists in Phuket who were initially thought to be infected with monkeypox after developing blisters were actually infected with herpes. Over 400 confirmed monkeypox cases have been reported in 32 countries as of Sunday.
How to prepare children for an increasingly globalized world while keeping them rooted in their identity. QI Group of Companies Executive Chairman Datuk Sri Vijay Iswaran said that the education system must shift towards skills-based approach. He speaks to Astro AWANI's Editor-in-Chief Ashwat Ismail at the sidelines of the World Economic Forum 2022 in Davos.
See, unfortunately, we are trying to reinvent education as opposed to us, allowing education to flow through our borders. Now, what's happening in reality is that the universities today have education programs that are essentially without boundaries. It's all virtual, and they can tap into all of this, and they're actually doing it, and they are bringing that back home. See, for example, to give you a good example, is India. India sent out its best minds, its cream de la cream, to the US. Silicon Valley, the top IT companies all across the US. Of course, it was a brain drain. Essentially, at the beginning, it was a loss to India. Yeah. But eventually, what has resulted is that these guys have come home. All right, whatever said and done, they wanted to come home. Mestilah pergi balik kampung halaman. So even Malaysians have that urge. If we open our doors, the Malaysian diaspora out there is our most valuable resource. Because all of them connect to Malaysia, you see, and there is an intrinsic feeling, for Malaysia per se, and they will come back. Investments will come back, skills will come back, and education. So we cannot try to reinvent education, thinking that it must be a proper so-called Malaysian education, because there's no such thing. Yeah, you see, it is a global education. We are not preparing Malaysians to live and work in Malaysia. We are preparing Malaysians to live and work in the world. And if that comes true, then work from home becomes a reality, because it doesn't matter where you work from.
That's right.
You see? So, and this is something I think is very critical, that we stop trying to protect. We have gone into this protection mode, whether it is a family, where we are trying to protect and mollycoddle our children, or whether it's the whole country. We're trying to put up borders and say, okay, Malaysians must think in this fashion. You can't do that. And you can see classically how countries have failed in that regard. There's so many countries that have tried to do that. Open the doors to the world. Let the wind flow in from every corner of the planet. But keep our feet strongly in Tanah Air. That is our answer.
While speaking about growing as a country, Vijay also has some advice for politicians making the decisions.
I think the best politicians are the simplest. They were the people, if you take a look at our politicians who brought this, who made Malaysia possible, who basically came, they had very simple backgrounds. And today, our politicians have evolved to very sophisticated levels, complicated levels. Politics today has become very complicated. So I have always believed that, honesty.
1 + 1 is 4.
Exactly. Honesty works, in my opinion. Honesty works very well. And sometimes it's very important to be vulnerable as a politician and say, I'm just orang kampung. Let's work together, to get things done, because I don't have all the answers. And that's a great way to start, you see. Our politicians tend to follow a different philosophy. They know what is right. Yeah. But, what is right and being righteous are two different things. You see, so actually we all go through life making decisions that are wrong, essentially, and then improving it, and eventually making your decisions right. It's a process. And that's what Malaysia needs. Malaysia must be not afraid of making mistakes and moving forward, but making sure that the Malaysia survives. Because that's our future, coming together.
That is all we have for you on AWANI tonight. I'm Cynthia Ng. Thank you for watching.